If you're trying to start a business, grow your leadership skills, and build self-discipline, then this video is for you. In today's episode, I have Josh Mastel on to discuss leadership, sales, and how to have better relationships. And if you haven't hit that like button, please be sure to do so, and don't forget to subscribe. Hello and welcome to Health and Humanity with Dan Voss, a health podcast show centered around living healthier lifestyles and improving our human connection and relationships. I have with me today Josh Mastel. Josh is a dog dad of 2 gargantuan golden retrievers, fanboy of his fiance Cameron, who is also an entrepreneur, a sales leader, and a self-taught entrepreneur. As the passionate, high-energy founder of Uproar Partners, Josh's current laser focus is on leading his world-class sales team and helping his B2B tech customers dominate their markets and scale their businesses. In his personal life, he's currently training for a 30-mile Spartan race in October and looking forward to a wedding on New Year's Eve of this year. Josh, how are you, my man?
Awesome. A wedding that you won't be at, by the way.
I know. I'm really bummed about that. For my listeners that don't know, I'm also a wedding photographer. That is my main business, and I am shooting a wedding separately on New Year's Eve. So really bummed I can't be there for it.
Yeah, no worries. It's all right.
Yeah. So what's new? It's been a while since we've chatted. I know you got a lot going on. I also want to hear more about this Spartan race. How's that going? How's the training for that?
Yeah. I for the listeners, I know Danny through his older brother. Met in college, we're best friends, and I've always been the kind of guy that's like, if someone tells me I can't do something or there's a challenge, I've always been like, I'm not as competitive as I am with other people as I am with myself. Like I was always wanted challenges. I came into this year, and I was just looking for like. I've always been kind of weak, like a weak runner. Like I just never liked running. I've always just been the guy that's like, I hate running. And I was like, you know what? I'm sick of that like bullshit excuse. Like I'm going to turn into a runner this year. So I just went and found the hardest race I could find, which I didn't want to do a marathon because everyone does marathons. Not that there's anything wrong with them. And there's this Spartan, if you guys have ever heard of those Spartan obstacle race courses.
Yeah.
Well, they do their longest one, which is called an ultra. It's 30 miles.
Wow.
And it's 60 obstacles. It takes like 10, you have like 10 hours to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it and I was like, that looks impossible. So sign up for it. Yes. So I just signed up for it, and I went and found a trainer, and he's telling me everything I need to do to get ready for it. And I'm in the middle of it right now. That's brutal.
Intense. What is the breakdown of that? Obviously, a lot of it's running, and then you have obstacle courses. So is it just a series of obstacles that you got to go through?
Yeah, there's some long distance running in there. I mean, the total thing is 30 miles, but you don't run 3 miles straight. You run 2-3 miles, have a quick obstacle. It doesn't take very long. So the training is really not as much as long distance running. It's, can you run, do something physical and wear yourself out and get back at it. So I got a long ways to go. I mean, I'm still only at the 7-8 mile mark right now in terms of running, which is the longest I've ran in my entire life. So I got till October to train for it. So
I love it. What about for the training of it? Is it a lot of it? I would imagine you can do like body weight workouts. You probably don't need to be doing a lot of heavy lifting like at a gym, right?
Dude, this for the time of this recording, we're in the middle of coronavirus, and so obviously I can't go to the gym. So I converted my garage into a CrossFit gym. I've been doing CrossFit for a while, so I turned it into a gym. We got pull-up bars and weights and everything you can imagine there. So once this is all over, I'm not going to need a gym anymore. I'm going to save a bunch of money on it.
That's great, man. Yeah, I was curious how that training was going during quarantine, if you had to adjust, and it sounds like you are. So
that's great, it's a lot of squats, a lot of running, a lot of push-ups, a lot of pull-ups.
That's good.
Have you ever done a Murph before?
I've heard of it, like the Murphy. It's called the Murphy workout, right? Or Murphy.
Yeah.
You have to do certain amount of push-ups.
It's a 1 mile run.
That's right.
And then it's 100 pull-ups, 200 sit-ups, 300 squats, and then another mile run.
Okay.
So there's a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's brutal, dude. It's miserable. But
I think I first came across the Murph maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, and I gave it a try, and I got like halfway through the first set, and I'm like, no, I can't do this, man.
It's tough, man.
It's tough.
I just did my first one last weekend. I was sore to the point where I couldn't even. I'm not good at pull-ups. It's a weakness of mine. I couldn't move my arms for days.
Wow.
So I've committed to doing one a weekend the entire month of May. So I got to do on this. I got to do on Sunday.
That's great. And it'll be a good way to get in great shape for the wedding in December as well.
Exactly right.
Awesome. Cool. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Uproar Partners? And I'd love to hear more about the origin story of you starting the company and kind of how that all came about.
Yeah. So I've been in sales my whole life. And I was 15 years old. I got a job selling Cutco knives. If you guys have ever heard of those salesmen walking around your neighborhood, if you live in Morris, Illinois, and you're listening to this, you have a set of Cutco knives on your counter. I grew up in this little small town outside of Chicago.
Directly sold by you?
What's that? Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Everybody in that town owns Cutco knives. Yeah, I did really well in it, and so I learned at a young age, I'm going to be in sales. It's just it was kind of natural for me. I enjoy communication. I enjoy building relationships with people. I've never been afraid to go meet new people. So, out of college, I got into the sales world. And believe it or not, which is a story we could talk about, I got fired from my first sales job, like in the real world. And anyway, long story short, I ended up down the road there into sales management, and figured out that like managing salespeople and building culture and building teams is a gift of mine. Like it's something I love to do, something I'm naturally really good at. I had really good managers growing up that taught me a lot. So I just climbed the corporate ladder of the company I was with and was doing really well, was really highly compensated, was on a fast track, leading lots and lots of salespeople. And I was just wasn't fulfilled. There was something missing. I think deep down, I always knew I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to be the captain. I wanted to do something different. So I was never really fulfilled. Like you could throw more money at it. You could throw more people at it. You could throw more opportunity at it. And I just never was super happy. So there's some circumstances there. I ended up just leaving, jumping off the cliff. And I had no clue what I was going to do. I was like, I know that if I don't do something, I'll stay here forever, because it was getting really comfortable. And I started a business. I was like, I'm just going to go to people and figure out what kind of pains they have in the sales world, and I'm going to help them. So I just kind of did consulting for a while. I mean, my first customer they paid me $10,000 to fly to India and train some of their offshore sales people and recruiters. I had no clue what I was going to do. Over time, over the last 3-4 years, that's morphed into who we are today. And what we do is very specific. We work with B2B tech companies that want to scale and grow very fast. And we come in and build a sales playbook for them and their strategy. And then I have a team of what we call really elite salespeople, like the Navy SEALs of sales. And we can then execute that sales strategy for companies so they don't have to do it themselves.
Sure. That's great. That's a really neat story. What do you think, that period where you decided to jump ship and just go off and start your own business, it takes a certain skill set, a certain mindset, I guess, to have that entrepreneurial path. What are some of the skills that you think you have in terms of sales, in terms of entrepreneurship, leadership, that helped you go off and do that and have the guts to start a business and start something new?
Yeah. I wrote in my Mother's Day card, it's Mother's Day on Sunday. If you haven't sent your card to your mother yet, do it, Danny boy. But I wrote in my Mother's Day card this year, I said, Mom, the thing I'm most grateful for this year, I wanted to say thank you for on Mother's Day, is that since I was a young kid, you always told me that I could do anything. Like you've always said, which everyone says that to their kid probably, right? But for some reason, I just grew up with this confidence that if anyone else has ever done it, there's no reason I can't. So I have this crazy, unwavering, I'm almost nuts about it, that I've gotten into arguments before that I've never played football in my life, and that I think I could be in the NFL if I really wanted to or tried to, which I know is insane. That probably is where the limit is. You can't actually do that. People are like, Josh, you're stupid. No, you can't. I just have this crazy confidence that if someone else has done it, it's doable. It could be done if you're willing to do it. So that one trait, that one mental kind of aspect has helped me so much. It's not easy. It has never been easy, but that's helped a ton.
For sure. That reminds me of Gary Vee. I know we've talked before about getting into Gary Vee and all the things that he's shared. And I'm sure it's not the last time I will talk about him, because I look up to his work quite a bit and everything that he's doing right now. But he shares publicly that his parenting, his parents, the way they parented him was absolutely exceptional. And he's talked about stories of when he was a kid, holding the door for a stranger and his mom just like putting him up on a pedestal, making him feel so good about what he did. And he said that really just like carried through with him his whole life. So that really kind of reminded me of your story there with your mom, just giving you that confidence, right?
100%. And, it's kind of like, not everybody gets to have parents like Gary Vee, right? Gary Vee, like you said, raves about his parents, great parents. And not everybody has a great situation growing up. Like that one side of the story is, Mom, thank you so much for what I wrote in the card. The other side, which she and my dad would willingly admit, I also have a lot of battle wounds from the family that I grew up in. Like they did, things weren't always great. There's a lot of things that I got bruised up on, not physically, but at the end of the day, here's how that works. Whether you come up in a good situation or bad situation, or you're currently in a good situation or bad situation, you have two choices. You either use the information that you're going through for good or for bad. So you could argue that Gary Vee probably could have been raised by the worst parents and still would be who he is, because he just would have learned the opposite. He would say, I'm just going to do the opposite of what my parents did. Yeah. So to me, it's like, I love that point that your parents are important, but it's also for some people as a crutch and an excuse.
Oh, for sure. For sure. There's actually a separate story that reminds me of that. It's a story of two twins that grew up in an abusive home. Their dad was a drunk and just physically abusive, and he ended up going to jail. And so then you have the two twins, they grow up, and one of the sons leads a similar life path where he gets into lots of trouble, with the law. He, is addicted to drugs and alcohol, and he ends up getting into jail himself. And then you have the other son who does the total opposite, who stays clean. He doesn't get in any trouble with the law, becomes a successful businessman and leads, a healthy, good life. So you have two identical twin brothers that were brought up in the same exact environment, the same upbringing, and one chose one path and the other chose the other path. So that's just goes to show, further your point that you either take what you have and say, well, of course, this is the way, my upbringing was. My dad ended up in jail. Like, what do you expect from me? I'm going to go off and do the same thing. Or you can say, well, my dad ended up in jail. I don't want to be that. I want to live a different life.
If you want an excuse, man, you can always find one. Excuses are the easiest thing in the world to find.
Sure. 100%. Do you think your mindset of, you're looking at your upbringing, and like you said, there's two ends of the argument there, the conversation. One is that you had your mom really encouraging you and pushing confidence into your life, and then the other end was, there was some not so great moments in your childhood. It was a difficult time, at times. Do you think both of those helped you to become the man you are and to form that drive that you have in business and in life?
Oh my God, 100%. I mean, I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through all those things. Like on one side, I have this crazy confidence because I was always, I grew up in that being affirmation all the time. You can do whatever. The other side is I'm tough, man. Like I'm pretty calloused and tough. Like, we're going through a pandemic right now at the time of this recording, right? I'm running a business, a growing business in a really bad time. Like there's a lot of companies going through some really tough stuff. Yep. But I'm just not freaking out. Like it sucks and it's hard. There's a lot of bad things, but I've been through bad things. Sure. And I know how this game works. Like you toughen up and you find a way to survive through it or you don't. So like I'm so thankful for that too. Like I learned how to be pretty tough through all that.
For sure. What is it, do you think, in terms of the idea of success and failure? Maybe you can touch on some of the early years of your career and your entrepreneurial path, where maybe you did have moments of failure, or success, or like we're going through right now, the pandemic, and a lot of businesses are getting hit hard right now. What is it that allows you to keep moving forward when you are facing those challenges? And specifically right now where you said, you're just not freaking out about it. You're pushing forward. You're going to make it happen no matter what. What allows you to get to that headspace?
That's a good question. I mean, I just focus on things that I can control.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget who said this. Who's the really motivational guy? The preacher, Eric Thomas. Eric Thomas said this a long time ago. I think it's Eric Thomas, right? He said, "Listen, I like to control what I can control, right? That's my philosophy. And what I can't control, what happens outside of my control, like if worst case scenario happened and this thing wipes my business out, or whatever else could happen that's negative and bad, you still can't take from me what I've learned from the day I started till now. So I could get back up tomorrow and restart something."
Yeah.
So worst case scenario to me, a mistake I made early on in my career, my entrepreneurial career, is I cared what other people thought a lot, because I was successful before I started this. I was like, I thought I was the man.
Right.
Maybe I was the man for a while, right? Like I was pretty high up at a large company, like I was a track. And so that was my identity. So when I started out, dude, when you start a business and you're one man, you're in the bottom of the pond.
Yep.
Like, dude, you're not and I got so consumed with, I need people to think that I'm bigger. I think that I'm super successful. And that was bad. That was bad headspace. So I've become more patient over the years, which is super important.
For sure. Patience is really important. Especially that mindset, knowing that we have a lot of years ahead of us. I'm 28. I think you're what, 30?
34.
We're babies, man. We're babies in the game of life. If we end up living a full life, and I do believe people in our generation, we could live to 100, maybe 120, right? Who knows where advancements of science will take us. And if that's the case, we got a long road ahead. So I think patience is a really key thing to keep in mind. I also want to talk about a story, and you actually mentioned Navy SEALs of your team. It was a metaphor, but there's actually the actual Navy SEALs. There's a story where during their training, and I have this book that's actually in my room here. It's called No Hero by Mark Owen. He talks about, he's a former Navy SEAL. He talks about his training, and there was one moment where they were climbing up this cliff, they were literally rock climbing, and that was part of the training. And he got to one spot where he was stuck, physically had nowhere else to climb, no other rock to latch onto, and his trainer, his superior, was with him and said, do not look down, don't look to your right, don't look to the left, don't look up, stay in your 3-foot world. So that kind of became their mantra, was stay in your 3-foot world, keep perimeter of 3 feet around you, and use that to just keep going. You'll find the next stone, the next rock to latch onto within those 3 feet. And then you just keep moving forward. And I think that's such a good metaphor for what we're facing right now, is to stay in your 3-foot world. Don't worry about things that are outside of your control, because that's only going to bring you down. And if you just stay in that 3-foot world and focus on what you can control, we'll find a way out of this.
100%, man. And I think that also is a really good metaphor for, you can over plan. Listen, take your business plan, take all the business books that you sitting on your desk that people want to read before they go do something. There's nothing that beats, what's the next one step that needs to happen in your 3-foot diameter?
Right.
Forget the 10-year plan, and forget all the information you think you need to know before you do it. Just keep crawling.
For sure.
Forward progress.
For sure. That's so important. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of sacrifice. I look at the business I have as a wedding photographer. I had to give up the biggest thing I think about when it comes to sacrifice is social life, with friends and family, shooting weddings on Saturdays. I'm not out with friends anymore on Saturdays or hanging out with the family. At the very start of starting that business, it was working a day job, 9 to 5, and then going home and just working at night. I would be editing photos. I'd be doing marketing, building up my website, marketing myself on social media. So it was just like nonstop work and sacrificing relationships. What is it for you? Where did you find certain areas in your life that you had to sacrifice as you're building a business, or even today with your work? What are some of the main sacrifices you've had?
That's kind of a hard one for me because I've never been happier in my entire life. I'm doing what I want to be doing. So it doesn't feel like sacrifice to me. It's like, obviously there's things that I have to put as a priority over. It's not all fun, right? Like there's, my buddies they go on more trips than I do. They are going and traveling around the world. We're at the period in my life at my age where, if people are making decent money at this age, you're not in your mid-20s anymore. Like they're doing more fun trips, right? They're going to Egypt and they're going to all around the world.
Sure.
I pass on those trips just because 10 days away is a lot of time right now. So I'm not doing that kind of stuff, but I still it doesn't seem like a sacrifice to me because I'm still doing what I need to be doing,
Yeah.
And that's a priority.
And that's awesome. I mean, that makes me happy to hear that you're in a stage in your life where you've never been happier. There's a lot of factors of that, I'm sure. Your relationship with Cameron, I'm sure, is a big part of that. But it also sounds like a big piece of that is Uproar and, the work you've done there. So
100%.
Kudos to you, man. That's great.
Thanks, dude.
How about leadership, and especially in a time like right now? What are some effective methods, and just I guess it's more of a mindset than anything, with leadership? What do the best leaders in the world do to connect with their team members?
Yeah, it's probably one of my favorite topics because I have a really interesting perspective on leading people for a few reasons. One, I'm the luckiest man on earth in that when I was in my mid-20s, young 20s, I worked for literally a few of the best bosses, leaders in the world, like world class. I've learned so much information from them. So, and there's a lot of people that didn't have that, right? There's a lot of people that work for really bad bosses when they're younger. I had the opposite. So one, I got to see it. So that's the first perspective. The second perspective is I got thrown into management by accident at a very young age, like in my mid-20s, when I wasn't prepared for it. And so my second perspective is I made every mistake. So one, I saw the right way to do it. Two, I made every mistake that there possibly is. And now three, I'm finally at a period in my career where it's like now I get a full view at how to do it. And I feel like it's a gift that I have. It's something that I'm put on this earth to do. And that's all prepared me for it. So to break it down, I look at leadership as a couple things. One, leadership it's not an act. It's not like this is what you do. Leadership is personal relationships with every person that you work with. So every single person needs to be talked to differently, managed differently. They care about different things. We're talking about human beings. It's managing a garden, and it's like every single thing in this garden needs different sunlight, needs different it can't all be the same. And people, I think, read leadership books and they're like, okay, I'm going to go apply this tactic to my people. That's dangerous. I used to do that.
Sure.
It doesn't work. And the second thing is, and I'm really big on this point, it's self-accountability, man. Like everybody wants to be a leader. And the hard thing about it is like you have the spotlight on you. If you're going to set a precedent on your team, hey, this is how we're doing things.
Yep.
You can never mess up one time. It's all on you. The system doesn't work if you don't do yourself what you're telling everybody else to do. And that gets missed all the time. People think leadership is you put your feet up and you tell other people what to do. It's actually quite the opposite.
For sure. Well, obviously, maybe it's not obvious to a lot of people, but when I hear you say that, it sounds, at least it sounds obvious to me that by it being something that it holds you more accountable, it obviously makes you a better person. It makes you a better man. It makes you a better leader. It makes you a better worker. It's like always that self-check there saying like, okay, you have this team watching you and you got to show up, you got to deliver, and you have to, like you said, do what you are asking them to do so that they can see that, hey, our leader's doing this and he's walking the walk.
100%.
That's great.
100%. It's so important, man. Self-accountability.
Yep. That's good. And then that first point I kind of want to touch on a little bit further. So you're saying that it's the difference between looking at it as I'm going to manage this team of it's the whole team approach. Like I have a whole group of people that I'm just going to manage one way. But you're saying it's actually no, it's about looking at each individual and building a relationship with them and getting to know each individual, each person as a human being. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, a great example would be like, Danny, you got a bunch of brothers, right? You got a big family and a sister. You can't parent every single one of you. Guys are all very different. I know all of you very well, right?
That's right.
Vince is going to respond to things much differently. He's motivated by different things. He's inspired by different things. If you're angry at him and you correct him in a different way, everybody is different. We're people out here. Employees aren't objects. They're your greatest thing that you have. They're people.
For sure.
And sometimes people have bad days. Sometimes people are going through a really tough situation at home. Sometimes people don't agree with what you're doing. Like, you got to manage everybody completely differently. So it's probably one of the most important things I would tell anybody that's new in that game. And trust me, I'm saying this because I made the mistake myself. I made a team of people hate me because I did it the wrong way early in my career.
Yeah. And that goes back to, like you were saying before, you've learned from your mistakes, right? You had every mistake made in the book, and you were able to use that to improve.
100%.
I like that analogy of a family because, like you said, I am one of the youngest of 5 kids, and we are all very different personalities. We have a lot of similarities in certain ways, but I think when you break down the personality, we all are very different. And it's the exact same way with a team, with your business, that each person is going to come from a different background. They're going to have different passions. They're going to have different interests. And you have to be able to work with that and not lead in a way that is just forcing it on the entire team.
100%. Some people don't care about money.
Yeah.
If you're a leader that's really money driven, here's kind of where it connects to, like, have you read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of similar to that concept of like, listen, just because you're money motivated doesn't mean all your team members are.
Yep.
So you can't just throw money at someone and expect them to perform at the level of which you would perform.
For sure.
But back to the family example, that also applies on the expectation side, where I said, if you're going to set the team expectations, you have to do the same. It's kind of like your dad, if you're growing up with a cigarette in his mouth, is like, kids, when you grow up, you better not be smoking cigarettes.
Right.
Like, with a cigarette in his mouth, you're like, dude,
Sure.
Dad, whatever. You know what I mean? You're not going to learn from him. It's the same thing.
Yep. 100%. That's great, man. So with leadership, do you have any examples of certain things that you do with your team? You know, I remember back in the day when I was working, in the corporate life, one thing that I actually ended up really enjoying was one-on-one meetings with my supervisor. You know, maybe it was once a month. And I found that was a really good way for my leader, my supervisor, to get to know me as an individual a little bit better. You know, we would talk about projects that I was working on, what was going right, what was going wrong, areas that I might need help in. So I just found that one-on-one time with supervisor to employee to be really beneficial. Do you have any examples of like something like that you like to implement in your company?
Yeah, I mean, we do every single employee has one-on-ones internally, so we do that. That's a pretty standard process, you know, for people. It's important, you know, like, but don't do that stuff to do that stuff. Like, I think people like to want to check the boxes. Listen, I'm really caught up on this idea right now of expectations. I always have been, but I'm really starting to get some mental clarity around the topic of expectations. And I feel like it's getting deep enough where I'm going to one day write a book on this whole idea. I think everything in our life, everything in this entire world that is negative or bad. Like any disagreement, anytime somebody's unhappy, anytime someone leaves a job, it's always because expectations were not clear. Every fight you've ever had with your girlfriend stemmed from an expectation not being clear.
Wow.
She thought something was going to happen a certain way, and it didn't because the expectation wasn't clear early on.
Yep.
So back to the one-on-one and like things that we do internally and things I'd recommend people do internally is I set crystal clear expectations with everybody all the time in my life. And it saves me from ever having heartache, pain. I don't fight with a lot of people. I don't argue with a lot of people. I'm not mad at many people. People aren't madly mad at me because I'm always crystal clear. Like,
sure.
I don't do a lot of things with my friends as much as I'd like to. And I get made fun of a lot for it. Like, oh, Josh, you never come do this. But what they'll never say to me is I never show up. If I say I'm going to come, I'm going to come. I'll just tell you I'm not going to come. So the expectation is crystal clear. I'll tell you now I'm not going to come. Yeah. What most people do is they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe I'll stop by, and they don't do it. Person's upset because the expectation wasn't clear.
100%.
It translates into every area of our lives.
It really does. It translates to, like you said, relationships, romantic relationships, roommates, your boss, your employees, your parents, any type of relationship you have. If you set that expectation, they know what they're going to get. And it also leads to credibility, right? If you say you do what you say you're going to do, then you have this level of credibility. And if you do the opposite, then you lose that credibility.
Yep, it's one of the values of our company. It's what the definition you just gave there is integrity. Right? I think people have a misconception of what integrity means. I think it means like high character. Sure. The word integrity, if you look it up, means doing what you say you're going to do when you say that you're going to do it, in the matter of which you just said you're going to do it. So one of our values is, listen, if you say you're going to do something, if you're going to make 100 calls today, sales calls, you're doing it. Or else you're breaking one of the values here. Now, I'm not forcing you to say you're going to make 100 cold calls today, but don't say it and not do it.
Wow.
Say 50 if you're only going to do 50, but do what you said you're going to do. It makes everything so easy because anytime someone says they're going to do something, I can, as a leader now, I'm like, all right, it's going to get done because it has to get done because you said you're going to do it.
I love that. That's the reason why I'm getting so excited about this is because it's actually an area of my life that I need to improve on, and I'm willing to admit that I'm not good at this at all. It's one thing that I for sure need to work on, where I over promise and under deliver, not so much in the sense of quality of work, but really just like little tasks, like, hey, I'll get this email over to you, and then I don't for like a week. I think I maybe even did that with you, Josh, to set up this interview. I probably told you I was going to get an email to you in the next few days, and it took me like a week. So I'm as you're talking about this, I'm thinking in my head like, wow, this is something I really need to work on.
It's an easy fix. It's this simple. The pain of letting something down that you said you're going to do is worse than the pain of telling someone up front the truth of what's going to happen. People don't care if it takes you 5 days to get an email to them.
Yeah.
As long as you told them, hey, give me to the end of this week, I'll get something to you. People don't care. They got other things going on. But I think you get caught up in the moment. People do. I've struggled with this in the past sometimes too. You want to please people now, but all you're doing is actually the opposite. You're hurting yourself.
Yeah. 100%.
You know what I mean?
100%. That's good, man. I'm learning, and I think a lot of it has to do with this quarantine, that there's certain areas of my life that I just need to stop and pause and think more. Like I just got in such a rut of constantly going. And I failed to just stop and like think things through. Like think about like, okay, what is it that I want? Like, what is it that I'm trying to do here? What's going to be the best outcome? What can I do to set the right expectations or certain expectations so that the other person knows what they're getting on the other end? So that's just a personal note. Like this has been a really good time for me in the last few weeks, just to stop and pause and really think through like, what's the intended outcome here?
Yeah. Dude, I have too. I've enjoyed it. I mean, me and Cami have spent some awesome time together. My fiance,
that's great.
Like, we're running businesses. We're both working from home. So like we're able to kind of strategize with each other and be in the same house like we normally wouldn't. And you're right. It is making me stop and be like, hey, like when things go back to normal, do we need to be running around all weekend and week going out to restaurants and bars? You know, I love restaurants and bars,
Sure.
socializing, having fun. I love it. But like, is there some pretty cool value and joy in sitting on your porch and FaceTiming and Zooming people that you're not in the same city with? I've gotten much more joy from that than seeing the same people I see every weekend at the restaurant.
100%.
You know, 100%. It's like, it's been really cool eye opener for me too.
Yeah. I've even thought of, I shared with you before we recorded here that my girlfriend and I live separately, and she's a nurse, so we're not able to see each other during quarantine. So we don't have that time together right now where we're just like quarantining together. So I was thinking the other day, like even when this is all said and done and over with and we are living together down the road, I think it'd be cool, like maybe once a month, just have like a 48-hour quarantine where it's like, hey, this weekend, we're not going out. We're going to watch movies. We're going to have movie night, make popcorn. We're making dinner. Like, we're just going to bunker down and enjoy this quality time together.
100%. 100%. Dude, I'm going to look back. I can't wait 10 years from now to come back and listen to this recordings. We're all going to remember COVID forever.
For the rest of our lives.
This is 100%. A worldwide pandemic, right? I'm excited to look back at this, or my kids to watch this. And, like, this will be a transitional point in my life and my career. The things that I've thought of during this quarantine, the moves I've made in my business, the chess moves I've made in my business, the little things that we've changed, this will change the game for us. And as horrible as it is, by the way, people are losing their jobs, companies are going out of business. I'm not saying it's a great thing. I'm saying I'm going to look back and it's forcing me to do things I wouldn't have normally done. And it's going to be a benefit for me in the end.
100%. I've said this a few times in recent podcast interviews that I've done. Like you said, it's there are a lot of bad things from this, right? People are being hospitalized, people are dying. A lot of businesses are struggling. But I do think overall, for most people, this is an opportunity for us to find some clarity in our lives, in our businesses. As you mentioned, maybe set up some of the chess moves to project ourselves forward when this is all said and done. So I think that is a really good opportunity for all of us.
For sure. Innovation will come from it, man. I mean, anytime things get tough, people innovate. We're tough. We're strong people, dude. Like, we'll figure out a way to survive. And here's what else. Like, listen, if you're out there and you're going through a really hard time right now, like maybe you're out of a job, your business is struggling, at least there's a ton of other people in the same boat. Right. It's not like this is you and you're struggling with something, everyone else is killing it, and you're just on this island like you're not doing well. Does not make it easy or good by any means. But there's a ton of people around for a support system, and everyone will kind of rise up together, I think.
That's right. Yeah, we're really all on the same playing field. And for myself, with my business, with weddings, you know, every wedding is being postponed right now through, you know, all the spring weddings and even into June and July here. So everybody is being affected by it. And for me, like, that's where I realized, you know, I'm going to have a few months off here, and I've had this side project that I've been wanting to do, which is the podcast, and starting to grow a little bit, you know, on maybe a personal brand and social presence. And so that's where, like, that first week of quarantine and lockdowns being announced, I was like, shoot, let's go. This is an opportunity to do this. You know, I was going to get around to it in the next year, maybe on the side, but why not take this opportunity to get this started? And just on a side note, personal note, with the podcast, this was like absolute perfect timing for me with this topic, right? Like health and just being a healthier person with our nutrition and our sleep, and just like taking care of our bodies, but also taking care of our minds and our souls and our finances and our relationships. Like, there's just so much. We were talking earlier, Josh, there's so much that health can be related to. It's everything, really.
100%, man. I'm on a big mental health kick right now. I just think it's a topic I never talked about. I never thought about my whole life. Until last year, I went through a little mental health check myself last year, and I was like, shit, this is a real thing. Like, this needs to be addressed. Like, I always thought it was like a hoax, like mental health, like toughen up, you're fine. You know, like, be positive, go listen to a podcast. Like, that's just not the answer. It's a real thing out there that people need to take seriously. And I didn't know it till last year. I went through some myself.
I want to talk about that a little more. I think in Western culture, up to about, let's say 5, maybe 10 years ago, I think up to that point, Western culture, it was like, man, if you're like meditating or you're into like mindfulness, anything around like the mental health space, it was very like voodoo, like Eastern culture, Buddhist, like you have to like sit with your legs crossed and like that's, but that's not really what it is in terms of meditation. So I think from what I see in the last 5-10 years, at least in the Western culture, we're coming around to the idea of this is real. And it's not something that has to be like fluffy or voodoo. It can be for benefit. It's our mental health, which is arguably equally as important, if not more important than any other area of health in our lives. So
100%.
What is it that you have been implementing in your life for mental health?
Yeah, so a few things. So I'll tell a little backstory on this. So if you knew me, if the folks who don't know that are listening to this knew me growing up, like Danny knows me and his family knows me, people would tell you I'm the happiest human being on earth. Tons of energy, always a smile on my face. I've just always been that way naturally. It's not fake, it's genuine, it's real. It's always been that way, right? And last year, I went through this weird phase, like for like a few months, maybe even 6 months, half the year of 2018. I just wasn't happy, man. I was just like waking up, and there's days I'd wake up and be like, I just don't even want to go, like, get out of bed to go work. Yeah. Just don't want to do this. Really unhappy. And it was just so, dude, it was such imagine for me like, being that way, the opposite of that for so long, and then feeling kind of this like gray cloud over me. I was just like, man, what is this? It was just so weird. And so I came home I hid it from everybody. Not a single person that knew it, because I put the mask on and I put the clown suit on, and it's just like, I'll just pretend to be myself. But there was a day when I was just like exhausted. I was like, you know what? I'm sick of like playing this character when I'm not really feeling that way. Yeah. So I came home. I remember a vivid night. I came home all day. I was stressed about it, worried about it. I was like, I'm going to go home and tell this to Cammie, my fiance. I'm going to tell the first person in the world about this. I feel like I'm struggling with something. And literally just doing that, just telling her, that was 1,000,000 pounds lifted off of my shoulders. And so what I've learned from that sense is like, listen, we all are going to go through hard times. Like nobody's a superhero that is always happy all the time. Right. And the fact of the matter is, when you're struggling, you need to just get support from the people around you and I think me telling it was me being real with myself. Like, okay, there is maybe a problem here. Right. So it's like, to me, it's seeking the truth of situations that keeps my mind really light.
It's when I hear you say that, it's what comes to mind is the word acceptance. Like you accepted the fact that this is reality. And I think without acceptance, you can't move forward, right? If you didn't accept, if you didn't go home to Cammie and share that with her or anybody else in your life, and you just held that in, it would have crushed you, man. Like you wouldn't be able to get past that. It would just continue to cloud over you.
Dude, it's back to what I just talked about a minute ago. My expectation in my head is you're supposed to be happy. Yeah. And everyone expects you to be the happiest guy, life of the party guy. This side's going, but I'm not that. My expectations were off with myself. Dude, expectations are the root of every single thing in the whole world.
I love that.
Get level with your expectations in your head about who you really are, what you expect about yourself. Yeah. And set the expectation that you can go through hard times. There's times that you don't have to be the superhero. That's what I learned.
Incredible. So do you think it's all of that? Do you think it's setting expectations? Like that's, like you said, you set that expectation for yourself. Like, this is who I am. I'm this happy guy. I'm full of energy. I can't be somebody that's down and depressed. Was that all of it? Or do you also think that it was maybe some fear? And when I say, what I'm referring to is not sharing it with somebody else, right? Like you just didn't want to get it out to anybody. You just wanted to hold that back. Was it because you had set that expectation in your head, or was it also because you were fearful of being vulnerable with other people?
Oh, dude, 100% that's what it was. In my head, I'm like, well, I proposed to Cammie this year, and she said she was going to marry Josh the clown, not clown the bad way, but Josh the happiest,
Yeah.
most motivating, smile on his face, take on the world guy.
Sure.
What if she sees this weak side of me? Like, what if is she gonna think I'm a loser? Is she gonna not like me anymore? Which, like, you know, she's listening to this. So she is like, and we've talked about it. Like, that's ludicrous in her mind.
Right.
It's like the dumb shit you tell yourself. Is crazy, dude.
It is, man. It's,
You know?
but think about how many times throughout the day we tell ourselves certain things, right? Like there's certain thoughts that pop up and we just let that take control.
You are the person you talk to the most.
Yeah.
What is that dialogue?
Yep.
That quarantine will make you dissect that. And if you can win that battle, I'm not giving advice here because it's a battle I still need to figure out myself. And I'm always getting better at.
Yeah.
You can win that battle. Those are the elite people walking around. The people who are building crazy businesses, the people who are the best dads in the world, the best moms in the world, whatever it is that you want to be the best at, the people who have figured out how to talk to themselves in the best way. I want to be one of those people. I'm not yet, but I'm going to be.
That's great, man. You're preaching. I love it. This is great. I want to pivot a bit, and I love all of that we just talked about. I feel like maybe we could do another recording of just mental health, you know, a separate recording in the future.
Sure.
But I want to pivot a bit to your work with Uproar. I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of sales. And for me, like when I hear the word sales, or at least, I mean, now I don't think this way, but I did before. I hear the word sales and it's like this gimmicky thing. It's a salesman is somebody that is just like down your throat to buy their product and like, here, take it, buy it. Like it's just very forceful. And I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think for most people that is kind of their idea. Like they hear sales or salesman and they're just like, oh, that's like a little gimmicky, a little bit too much. But now that I'm in it, you know, as a business person, and yes, I'm a wedding photographer and I'm a podcaster, but at the end of the day, I'm a salesman. Like I'm selling to couples that are trying to hire me for their wedding photos, or I'm selling to people to come onto my podcast, or selling to people to watch my videos and listen to my content. So I just want to pick your brain a little bit more about the topic of sales and what that idea means to you.
Yeah, man, I first of all, I love that you said that, the gimmicky part, because it's kind of our kryptonite. Like it's kind of what makes my sales team what I think the best sales team in the world. And a lot of what my strategy has always been is that when the world is zigging, I'm going to zag. Mm-hmm. So you're right. 98% of sales reps out there are terrible, and they are gimmicky, and they're push things down your throat, and they're selfish, and they're the feeling you get when you walk on a used car dealership and you're going to get sold something, right? People don't trust that. They hate that. I love that the world's that way, because if I can act different than that, I can clean up. I could dominate, right? So the way I look at it, and we train a lot of like technical founders who, you know, think about like a techie engineer who built a brilliant software product and now they have to sell it. These guys never sold a day in their lives. They're engineers. Their brains are different than mine and your brain, right? Sure. They think X's and O's, and they're smarter in ways that we can't even think about. Mm-hmm. They're terrified of the idea of sales. And here's how I get them to a place where they can be really good. I think in this world, the best salespeople that we all know are doctors. And I know that doctors aren't actually selling anything and people are coming into their office, but for the sake of this example, I think you'll get something out of this. When you go to a doctor's office, a doctor does not sit you down to school. Look how great I am. Look at all these other people that I've done surgeries on. They don't pitch you anything. They sit you down. They go, Danny, what's up? Why are you here, dude? Like, you shouldn't be at the doctor. Why are you here? You clearly have a problem. And then you tell them, and then he asks a bunch more questions. He goes, all right, awesome. Like, tell me why your knee hurts. How long has it been hurting for? What's your life like? What are you eating? What's your exercise routine? How important is your knee to you? LeBron James's knee is more important than my knee, right? Good point. So how important is your knee to you? So, and then all he does is he uses his brain to solve your pain. That is sales. At its core, that is sales. It's people solving other people's problems. It's not people pitching their agenda on other people. So if you can take that approach, that can help with the whole gimmicky thing. I think that's a good strategy for anybody out there that's selling. take that approach and you'll win all the time.
For sure. There's one concept that I've really learned a lot about in the last, let's say, I would say 6 months to a year with the sales approach is providing more value to your customer, and effectively communicating that value. And what I mean by that is, you can have a product or a service, and you can try to sell it to them and say, here's my product, here's my service, here's why it's so good. Or you can communicate in a way that shows value. And to your point, it's communicating to them like, here is a solution to your problem. Does that sound about right in terms of?
Yeah, let's use a real example here, Danny. I'm getting married at the end of this year, so I've been interviewing photographers and videographers and vendors and blah blah blah. Here's how everybody does it. They get on a call and they go, well, let me tell you about how I work. Here's how we work. Here's our 3 packages. You get 8 hours, 10 hours, blah, 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 blah. You get 2 photographers. Here's some examples of what we do. It's all about them. The doctor doesn't do that. If I was selling photography, and here's what I want you to do, the first 20, 30 minutes should only be real quick. 1, congratulations. Tell me your story. Tell me your guys' story. How'd you get engaged? Yep. And what's your vision of the wedding? Cool. Mm-hmm. Now, when you think about the pictures of your wedding, what do you want? Yes. What's important to you?
Yeah.
How are you going to use them? Picture yourself at the day of the wedding. How do you want the photographer involved? Do you want, what's important to you there? And then at the end, if you're like, I'm that guy or I'm not that guy, be honest. But now they know that you have their best interest at heart because you actually care, because you ask the questions. No one gives a shit about your packages.
100%. I'm so happy you brought that up. Man, I should be talking to you more about the sales approach that you've had with all of your different vendors for your wedding. What comes to mind for me, I actually was just at a workshop in Columbus, Ohio in December with a wedding photographer. His name's Ben Hartley. And this guy is just like a ninja he's a really talented photographer, but he is just crazy good at selling in business in general. So anyhow, I went to this workshop, and I don't want to give away all of his secrets because if any of my listeners are wedding photographers, you should absolutely go to his workshop, Abundance, and it was hands down the best investment I've made with my business. But his approach is exactly that. It's you set up a phone call before you meet with them in person. You set up a 20-minute phone call with them. And the entire phone call, or at least the beginning of the first half of that phone call, is about the couple. And there's a number of things, and you actually touched on pretty much all of them. It's number 1 is tell me more about the two of you. Josh, Cammie, I want to know who you guys are. Who are you as people? And then they get into it and they talk about how they met, their story, what they like, what they do in their free time, everything about them, right? You're just listening to who they are as people. And then another thing you talked about was, what is it that you see in your photos? And I asked that question, but I ask it in a slightly different way. I say, I want you to think about 1 year after your wedding and you're on the couch, maybe it's a cold, snowy day and you're cuddled up, wrapped around in blankets and you're just hanging out on your couch and you have your wedding album in front of you on the coffee table and you pick it up and you're flipping through the pages. What photos do you see? And now they're telling me, well, this is what we want in our photos. We care about our parents. We want our parents in there. We want our family. We want to see everybody having a good time. Maybe we value the formal portraits. We want those in there. Like they're sharing what it is that they really want. And I think by doing that, by taking that approach about just pouring everything into them and making it, like you said, about them and not about me and my product and my service. Because at the end of the day, there's thousands of photographers, right? Like they can go off and hire anybody else and get virtually the same job done. But if I show the values in them and not me, then that's where I think for the most part, you're going to close the sale.
100%. So I'll give you our live example. You're right. Most people today, everybody listening to this, if you're in sales or you work for a company that sells something, you're not selling anything novel. Nobody has anything. There's not a photographer out there that can take the best photos in the world and no one else can do it. Like, I'm sure maybe I'm wrong in the 0.01% there, but any photographer that does weddings is going to be able to do a good job and get me the pictures that I want a year from now when I'm looking on my couch. People, this translates beyond photography to every other aspect. People want to work with people they like.
Mhm.
That is a fact.
Yep.
And you coming to a sales call and asking me questions about me and not being all about you is a sign to me that you're the kind of guy that I would like to do business with.
Right.
So the purpose of asking those questions isn't to like get this insider information to use against someone. It's to let them know that you actually do care about them and you're a good guy. Now, here's another step that I would recommend you do in your process is in competitive markets like you're in. Sometimes if there's 5 other photographers that take that same approach, you're competing against 5 people that are running the same sales cycle. It's a flip of a coin.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to do more up front to secure more deals. So what you could do is say, hey, have you guys gotten your engagement photos done yet? And if they're local, no, let me come do them. I'll do them for free. So I'll show you what I'm all about.
Yeah.
And afterwards, if you like them, we'll do the wedding too. That's what our lady did. She charges a low price for the engagement photos, but we spent 4 hours with her. We loved her.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to move forward with her.
Right.
She killed it on the photos.
Yeah. That's great. That's a really good idea. I like that a lot. Because oftentimes that's something that's just kind of included in the package. So I think that's a really good way to have that experience with them. And now like you said, you were with her for 4 hours, right?
Yeah, they get to try before they buy. They know how you're like. And we loved her. We had so much fun with her. Like, of course we want her. And it's less risk now because we know in our wedding we got someone that's cool.
Exactly.
And, like, you could also do a sales strategy. Be, hey, listen, I charge $1,000 for engagement photos. For my customers, I don't charge. So if we end up doing the wedding, then the engagement photos are free. I'm shoot them now. If you don't move forward with me, no harm, no foul. I'm still going to get you the photos. I'll just charge you $1,000.
Yep.
That'd be a pretty good sales strategy for you.
It is. I like that. That's really great. Cool, man. Before I wrap up here and ask my last question, where can people find you? Would you like to have them head over to Uproar's website, check out your personal social profiles? Where would you like to send people?
Yeah, uproarpartners.com. If we got a lot of really good content on there. If you're in like sales stuff, I mean, there's a ton of sales blogs. I have a podcast as well that's on there. You can see. You can hit me up on LinkedIn, Instagram. Just search my name, Josh Mastel. You can find it anywhere.
Awesome, love it. This has been great. My last question for you is: who do you want to impact the most with your work?
That's a tough question. Great question. You know, I'm really passionate about young professionals, man. When I was young, like I told you, I had, like my favorite part of this interview was me sitting here thinking I wonder how some little sales things I could do to help Danny's business. And if you apply one of those little things, whether it's good for you or not, or someone else does, and they're like, damn, I just closed a deal because I used a different strategy. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
That gets me out of bed every day. Like that. So impacting other people that can see benefits from things that I've learned in the past. So usually that tends to be people younger than me because I've had the opportunity to live longer than them. So it's usually younger people.
Love it. Josh, you're the man.
You're the man. You are the man, dude. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and everything that you're about. It's really an awesome thing to hear. So
100%.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
All right, buddy. You have a great day.